everyone, this is Tamara, your courtroom companion. If you're new to my channel, welcome. And if you've been here for any amount of time and you keep coming back, I appreciate that, and welcome back. And in today's video, we're going to talk about the right of first refusal. It's a big topic in the area of custody, so we're going to get into that in just a minute. But before we do, I'd ask that you please subscribe to the channel, and there's a subscribe button. Please do hit that, and also click the bell notification so you're aware of when I upload my content. So let's jump right in. Before you add right of first refusal in your custody order, I want you to think really long and hard about it. And we're going to define that in a moment for those of you who don't know what it is. But it's a big topic, and it shouldn't be included in your custody order unless you sort of think about all of the things that could go wrong with right of first refusal. So in this video, we're going to talk about the 2 advantages that I see of including it, and then 7 things that I want you to consider before adding it into your custody order. Now, you don't always have influence over your custody order. Some judges write their own orders, but in my case, I was allowed to see the draft of custody orders, and that was very helpful. So if you do have influence over it, these are things that you need to consider before you request to have it in there or to exclude it. When we talk about the 2 advantages, it's really important to understand that these advantages are not really advantages when you're talking about a narcissistic co-parent or a co-parent that displays narcissistic tendencies. So even though we're going to review these 2 advantages, they're not necessarily advantages, but it's commonplace that these are the things that are talked about as being advantages for right of first refusal in a custody order, but they don't necessarily apply for narcissists. So we're going to get into that in a second. So what is right of first refusal? And I'm going to read you the definition that ourfamilywizard.com uses, or at least from their website. And Our Family Wizard, if you don't know, is an application or software that a lot of custody folks use. Those who are involved in custody will use this to do, custody calendars and messaging and things like that. And so this is a pretty common website where I pulled this from, but I want to read it to you so that I don't misquote it. So right of first refusal in custody situations commonly means that one parent must first offer the other parent the opportunity to look after their children before contacting a babysitter or another family member to care for the kids. It is a clause that is frequently included in child custody agreements to help parents navigate parenting time exchanges. Now again, that's a definition from Our Family Wizard, and they are not taking into consideration parents with mental health issues like cluster B or narcissism. And so while that sounds really good, when we're talking about narcissists, it's not good. So here are the advantages that I see commonly cited as being, advantages for including it. So 1, it keeps the children connected to the other parent. And while that sounds really good, when you're talking about a narcissist parent, that's not always a good thing, because then the children are in the middle of all of that. And so it's an advantage for those that are not involved with cluster B parents or narcissistic parents. The second advantage that I see cited is that it encourages flexibility and transparency. When one of the parents is not going to be around, they'll just, call the other parent and say, hey, I'm doing this. Would you mind keeping the children? Well, that's not how it goes with a narcissistic parent. And so while that sounds really good, when you're dealing with a narcissistic parent, those advantages are not really seen. So I did want to share with you that those are the 2 advantages that I see out there. Next, we're going to talk about the 7 considerations that I want you to ponder before you decide to fight for or fight against having right of first refusal in your custody order. So the first consideration that I want you to ponder is whether or not your clause or your right of first refusal clause in your custody order will include planned and unplanned. And what I mean by that is it's pretty easy to plan, like if you're going to be at work, for example, or you're going to go on vacation. Those are things that if you include first right of refusal and you include those planned things, it's, hey, I'm going out of town, or hey, I have to work. Do you want to watch the children? versus unplanned, which is, does it include things like grocery store visits, or you just have to run out and do a few errands. That's not planned. So if you're going to include first right of refusal, you'll want to determine whether or not you're going to include planned versus unplanned, or both. The second consideration to ponder is the age of the child. So if you have little ones and they definitely need someone to watch them, you'll want to, maybe consider having the right of first refusal for the other parent, versus teenagers who don't necessarily need someone to watch them. If you're going to run to the grocery store or you're going to run errands for half the day, they don't necessarily want to go with the other parent. Maybe they want to stay home and sleep in, or maybe they want to hang out with their friends. And so the age of the child will be really important in your determination whether or not you want to fight for it or fight against it. The third thing to consider is how you will notify the other parent about first right of refusal. Are you going to use phone, or are you going to use email or text, something like that? So you'll want to put in there how you will notify them. The fourth thing to consider is what happens if the other parent does not respond. So you might want to consider putting in a time frame that you will send a notice and you will allow 24 hours notice or 48 hours notice. But if they don't respond in a certain amount of time, then you can move on to getting a babysitter or a family or friend to watch the children. The fifth thing to consider is, when exactly does first right of refusal kick in? We talked a little bit about planned versus unplanned, but first right of refusal does it kick in, after 2 hours? If you're going to be gone for more than 2 hours, is that when you have to offer the time to the other parent? Or is it after, 24 hours, if you're going to be gone for more than 24 hours? So when does that first right of refusal kick in your situation? If you've got a parent who travels a lot, on the spur of the moment, maybe you want to require that if he's going to or she's going to ask you to watch the children while they're out of town, that you need a little bit of notice, because maybe you don't have daycare set up for them while they're out of town and you're working. So it's really important that you really define when first right of refusal kicks in. The sixth thing to consider is whether or not step parents are going to be allowed to watch the children and it not kick in for first right of refusal. So if one parent is going out of town, but they're remarried or with a partner, does that step parent get to watch the kids without first right of refusal kicking in? And that can bring on a whole host of things, because maybe you don't trust that other step parent, or maybe you don't know them that well. So you'll want to consider that if you're going to put first right of refusal in your court order. Maybe you don't want them to watch them, so that's something you'll want to talk to your attorney about. Or perhaps you're fine with the step parent and maybe you don't think that, first right of refusal kicks in if the other step parent is there, or the step parent is there. The seventh and last thing that I want you to consider is what happens in a medical emergency for you and you're not available. Maybe the closest person is going to be a relative or a friend that you call on the spur of the moment because you're having some kind of emergency. So first right of refusal, does it kick in at that time? And I'm going to link a couple of videos above. One is I did a video on the 10 ways to lose a custody case, and then I recently did one on what to consider when you put phone calls, whether or not you're going to put nightly phone calls in your custody order. And that video is very similar to this one, in that regardless of what you do with first right of refusal, any language that you put in your custody order has got to be so exact. And if you're going to put all that stuff in that I just talked about, the notice and, how long they're going to have to respond to you, if you put all those considerations into your court order, that's going to be a lot of language. And what I have found in my own experience is that when you put a lot of language in, it actually backfires, because then there's loopholes that the narcissist can find. So be very careful if you decide to put it into your custody order. So I'll link those two videos above. I wanted to offer my opinion about this. I I have a strong opinion about whether or not right of first refusal should be in a court order when the other parent is a narcissist or displays strong narcissistic tendencies. I would say don't do it, because there's no way you can account for every single loophole or every single circumstance that could occur. I'm going to give you a couple of examples in my own situation where right of first refusal was used inappropriately / as a weapon. My ex used it as a weapon, and it caused a lot of problems. We were in court, I can't even tell you how many times, about right of first refusal. I can't tell you I would say hundreds of times. I don't think that would be an overestimation of how many times right of first refusal was mentioned in some hearing that I had in my custody situation. So the first example I'll offer is that I wanted to send my son to camp, a summer camp, for a week. And I received a bunch of emails and text messages about first right of refusal, that I shouldn't have sent him to camp because he was supposed to give his father first right of refusal. The second example is that I received a bunch of nasty messages about our son going to his maternal grandmother. So my mother was going to have him spend the night, and I was, my ex thought that meant first right of refusal. And what I tried to explain to him was that it's not that I'm not available. It's part of normal upbringing for children to spend time with family and friends. That's normal. It means they have a strong supportive network, and first right of refusal doesn't kick in. So it didn't matter what was in our court order. It was used in a way that wasn't appropriate. And so those are just two of the many, many times where first right of refusal came up, where it was used as a weapon. So I'm just a big proponent of not putting it in there. And that way, if you choose to allow the other parent to do it, you're doing it, on the fly. You're doing it as it comes up. That way you're not boxed into anything. And I just don't think that you can account for every circumstance that might occur around right of first refusal. I am a walking example of how it doesn't work. So just in summary, it's important to really think through all of the considerations that I just went through before you decide to fight for or fight against having right of first refusal in your custody order. Talk to your attorney about, all of these considerations. And then if your attorney advises you to include right of first refusal, then you have to be really, really careful about the language that's used. And I'm a proponent of less is more. So be really, really careful. Whether you decide with your attorney to include or exclude first right of refusal or right of first refusal, I've heard it both ways, it's important that you put your children first. So if you think that right of first refusal is best for your children, so that when your ex is out of town, or maybe he goes out of town a lot for work or whatever, that you want to have right of first refusal because you don't trust the other parent. You're making that sort of opinion based on your children's best interest, and that's great. But if you were wanting to exclude right of first refusal because you're angry at your spouse or ex-spouse, that's not really about your children. And so regardless of which way you go, really think through whether or not you're thinking about your children's needs in all of that. And as long as you do that, you'll be safe. And I think that you're on a good path for, your custody situation. I hope you found this video helpful in learning about right of first refusal. I'll be doing more videos about this because it's such a hot topic in the custody area. So please do continue to stop by. I'll be making more videos. If you have experience with right of first refusal, either including it or excluding it, please do comment below. Our community loves to hear from others who have had similar experiences. So do share your experiences below and give us some tips on what worked and what didn't work. We'd really appreciate it. And as always, please do hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.